All right, I think we're live. Push one in the chat if you can hear me. All right, got a confirmation. Thank you for the confirmation. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 833. Space and technology. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust. It's a doc in the description of the video for you to follow along with and reference. If you want to join the panel, there'll be a link in the chat pinned to the top. It's a Zoom link. Make sure you update your Zoom client before joining. Push one in the chat if you can see my screen. All right, cool. Got a confirmation. Let's get started. This is from TechCrunch. Rick Fox wants his concrete startups carbon credits to subsidize down payments for homeowners. Three-time NBA champion Rick Fox has a plan to solve the housing crisis in the Bahamas and beyond. Fox is co-founder of Partana, a startup that makes carbon negative concrete. Each block of his company's concrete avoids and removes 14.3 kilograms of carbon from the atmosphere, generating carbon credits in the process. On average, those credits sell for $300 per metric ton, Fox told the audience at Tech Disrupt 2023. Plenty of companies sell carbon credits, but what makes Fox's proposal intriguing is the fact that he'd be willing to roll those into a program to help lower the cost of acquiring a home made of Partana's concrete blocks. Quote, we can partner with those that might want to warehouse credits, finance us at the front end so that we can use those credits to support people in down payments, Fox said. We'll eventually get to a place where we create our own financing mechanism for homeowners. The idea sprung from Fox's experience following Hurricane Dorian, which devastated his home country of the Bahamas. Quote, they called it a once in a 100-year storm. It destroyed two of our islands. And at that point in time, I watched 30,000 citizens be displaced, he said. To him, it was clear that the country needed a new model to rebuild. I come from a small island developing nation where the global north is having a huge impact on the global south to meet development, he said. And that's not to point fingers, it's just the fact of what we deal with. Development is not going anywhere anytime soon. We're not going to stop developing. But, he added, that development needed to find its way to the Bahamas too. Getting to the scale that makes meaningful development possible, though, requires investors, partners, and customers. In climate tech, especially, those partners might have deep connections with oil and gas industry that's responsible for much of the climate crisis. One of Partana's first customers is Red Sea Global, a real estate developer wholly owned by Saudi Arabia's public investment fund. Saudi Arabia is not only one of the world's largest oil producers, but also has a spotty record on human rights. Fox elaborated on why Partana is focusing much of its efforts in the Middle East. When you're tackling this scale of challenge, which is to change the way we build the world for good forever, then you go wherever it's needed. And you try to make a difference in the areas that are building as much as Saudi Arabia is building. And so we are there, being a positive impact on their environment. So I'm not going to, read or play this whole thing, but essentially, this is probably one of the most innovative things that a Black man could have ever come up with. For those of you who don't know, we've talked about this in the past, that climate tech, climate change, climate impact, all of these sort of terms and nomenclature matter. And we've talked about the Department of Energy having a BOSS or BOSS initiative, Black-owned solar services. And so when you start talking about climate change and climate tech, this is a really open market that we think that Black people, specifically Black men, should be getting involved in. And so Rick Fox is at the forefront of all of this. We talked about Donnell Byard out in New York with the company called Block Power. We talked about another brother, Paul Francis, who has a company called Kidget. And so we're seeing a lot of maneuvering going on in this industry, and that's why we're talking about this now. Right? So I think Rick Fox is onto something really, really big, and I think that he could really flip the industry on top of his head. Okay? What's going on, Royal? All right, let me move on to the next item on the docket. All right, let me know you can see my screen. All right, next item on the docket is from The Verge. BMW expands its deal with Amazon Web Services to include autonomous vehicle data. Software will be integrated into BMW's new class platform due out 2025. BMW says it will use Amazon Web Services cloud software to manage data from its autonomous vehicles. The company has a pre-existing deal with AWS to handle data from its connected cars. Now, the German automaker is expanding that deal to include data from its next generation advanced driver assist system, ADAS, not to be confused with Descendants of Slaves, which is partly powered by Qualcomm's Snapdragon Ride Vision platform. BMW says AWS will help provide cloud storage from data related to generative artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, machine learning, and storage capabilities to help accelerate the delivery of highly automated BMW vehicles. The AWS software will be integrated into BMW's new class platform for its future lineup of electric vehicles due out in 2025. This platform will process roughly triple the volume of vehicle data compared to the current generation of BMW models, the company says. Driver assist features like adaptive cruise control, parking assist, and partially automated highway driving creates tons of data from engineering teams to process and analyze the future updates and improvements. For example, the platform provides a framework needed to process, catalog, and store millions of miles of real-time driving data in Amazon's Simple Storage Service, S3. Engineers and data scientists can then search, identify, and visualize relevant driving scenes to develop and train models using an Amazon SageMaker, AWS's service for building, training, and deploying machine learning models in the cloud and on the edge. BMW's new class vehicles will have significantly expanded brain power over existing models. The onboard computer will be able to process 20 to 30 times the data volume of previous models, or around double the amount of data that was previously possible. This will enable a greater fusion of the vehicle sensors, which will help enable higher levels of autonomous driving. The company's iDrive driver assist feature is designed to support both level 2 and level 3 autonomous driving systems. Advanced driver assistance systems defined as level 2 by the Society of Automotive Engineers include lane keeping, blind spot detection, automatic emergency braking, and adaptive cruise control. Most major automakers include some version of advanced driver assistance in their vehicles today. Level 3 refers to highly automated driving, also called conditional automation, where the driver still needs to be able to take over the wheel upon request. Yeah, this is expected. You're going to see car companies start pairing up with cloud computing companies like AWS, like Microsoft Azure, like Oracle, like what's the other cloud computing company? I can't remember the name off the top of my head right now, but basically you're going to see the emergence of all these traditional car companies pairing up with the existing cloud computing companies because they have to have access to ready-made tools. They don't want to build the tools themselves. They just want something that's already there. And I think that you'll probably hear something about BlackBerry's, IoT and other sort of cloud computing services they offer start to get paired up as well because they also are involved in this as well. So it's going to be fun times if you're trying to get into tech. This is the sort of space you probably want to get into. Right? Let me jump to the next item on the docket.
Hey, Mike, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. I don't know what was going on there. Just a quick note on what you were just talking about. So like if you notice like on the current Red Bull Formula One team, right? The primary sponsor is Oracle. Okay. So to what you were talking about, what Oracle does is for their esports and sim racing partners and stuff like that, they relay certain channels of data from the actual cars to the sim sports teams, right? They don't give it all because a lot of it is proprietary information for the stuff that you were talking about. But I just wanted to kind of highlight another convergence with regards to automotive makers working with cloud developers, right? Like you said, Oracle, and you mentioned one or two other ones. But that's just an example of in motorsport where it's even happening at the highest level because they're going to take all that data and then basically send it down into the consumer market, much like how in motorsport from back in the day, it was the technologies that were being developed with the engines, for example, with Honda and VTEC. It started in their Formula One cars, then it ended up in their production cars. So this is the same thing. You're seeing it Formula One, and now you saw what that article was just about.
Absolutely. All right, next item on the docket is from the Boston Globe. AI is coming to our neighborhoods and will show us the future of cities. Our research at MIT has found that once trained, visual AI is shockingly accurate at predicting property values, crime rates, and even public health outcomes. What can you learn about a city by looking at it? 70 years ago, the renowned urban planner, Kevin Lynch, walked the streets of Boston to find out. As he wrote in The Image of the City, he and his team found a city that was vivid in form and full of locational difficulties. And they were fascinated by how people used landmarks like the Charles River and Boston Common to orient themselves in the hub's treacherous streets. Lynch's groundbreaking research showed how the image of a city can tell you a lot about the life of a city. Now, as artificial intelligence learns to process street imagery, we are realizing that Lynch barely scratched the surface. Our research at MIT has found that once trained, visual AI is shockingly accurate at predicting property values, crime rates, and even public health outcomes just by analyzing photos. This will be a revolutionary tool for policymakers, giving them a data-driven understanding of every urban block. But it has a dangerous capacity to introduce biases and lead us astray. As unblinking digital eyes to come to our streets, we will be able to keep our eyes open. Walk down any street in Boston and visual cues will tell you a lot about it. The potholes in the storefronts, the models of cars, and the makeup of crowds all contribute to critical insights about our city. This street level assessment is especially important for identifying neighborhoods that are up and coming. Today, visual AI can follow the same signs on a massive scale. In a recent paper, our lab at MIT obtained 27 million pictures of American streets, along with quantitative data about neighborhood characteristics, ranging from crime levels to incidents of different mental health conditions. Then the computer used the training data to identify the correlations between visual features and underlying realities. This is the same pattern matching process that powers ChatGPT and self-driving cars, but we are only beginning to see its potential in our streets. Our study discovered that visual AI is remarkably effective at predicting many aspects of neighborhoods' profile, including poverty, crime, mobility, real estate values, and public health. The fine-grained knowledge has the potential to let us make data-backed decisions on every street. Cities could detect which parks are most in need of benches or which corners are at the highest risk of car accidents or violent crime. An advertising company could use computer vision to ascertain which are the best corners to place a billboard. A street vendor could figure out exactly where to move their cart from hour to hour. In the future, just like we will all have ChatGPT help us learn information, we could all have visual bots visual bots to help us see the physical world. But as powerful as visual AI can be, these algorithms can only see as clearly as their training data. Thus arise classic concerns about bias. An opaque algorithm could systematically devalue the homes or marginalized communities or encourage over-policing in those neighborhoods. We must also remember Goodhart's law, that when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. Imagine a dystopian future where everyone paints their walls a certain color to impress the bot, or local leaders focus on improving a neighborhood score on an AI metric rather than curing its real problems. Finally, predictions could become prophecies, locking cities into a preset ideal condition. Algorithms can optimize within their parameters, but they also paralyze us in existing ways of thinking. Thus, the era of AI puts a new premium on human intelligence, creativity, and courage. The use of these tools, and not to be limited by them, conventional wisdom is always conservative. Its pull becomes more powerful now that it is baked into the bots that are mostly accurate. What's going on with this page? That are mostly accurate and always available. A computer vision program is an invaluable tool to help a city optimize its traffic lights, but might lull human users into forgetting we should invest in bikes in subways. Computers can count every leaf on a tree, but only we can see the forest and what's going on with this page, man? I'm sorry, the page is just jumping around on me. Computers can count every leaf on every tree, but only we can see the forest and decide what we want to do with it. AI does not replace subjectivity with objectivity. It makes political questions of power and priority setting even more urgent. It will take human intelligence, creativity, and courage to break away from those constricting conventions, to expose the flaw in the algorithm, to question an optimization that does not make sense in a given context, or to propose an alternative that has never been attempted. Tireless, penetrating artificial eyes are coming to our streets, promising to show us things we have never seen before. They will be incredible tools to guide us, but only if we keep our own eyes open. I think we've talked about this before, that the Black community could be used as a sandbox for launching startups focused on AI, blockchain, IoT, micromobility, mini mobility, all of these sort of new emerging technologies that are coming down the pike. A lot of Black people who want to launch their startup could potentially start using the Black community as a test bed to start launching their innovation before they actually go to the public. All right, I think Complex is gone, but yeah, I mean, we talked about this in the past, and I think that you're starting to see now, it's starting to make a lot more sense in the long run. So. All right, let me move to the next item on the docket. All right, this is from Cointelegraph. Bosch, EU, and blockchain companies to build decentralized IoT, IAA mobility. The engineering and technology company Bosch is at the head of the forthcoming blockchain-based digital mobility project with backing from the German government, which was demoed live at IAA Mobility 2023 in Munich, Germany. At the event, Bosch, alongside collaborators such as Mobix and Peak Network, Needlework, revealed a peer-to-peer parking and charging scheme utilizing Move IDs on Peak ecosystem. Move IDs act as self-sovereign identities, SSIs, built on the blockchain, permitting autonomous transactions between vehicles and connecting infrastructure. The demonstration at IAA Mobility highlighted autonomous transactions between connected devices, a smart car charging station, and signal for parking. That's something. Cointelegraph was on the ground in Munich and spoke with Peter Busch, our project lead for Move ID and product owner for distributed ledger technology mobility and automotive connectivity think tank of Bosch, along with Leonard, co-founder of Peak Network, to better understand how blockchain is helping push forward the future of mobility. When asked why mobility was the right sector to begin implementing SSI on a large scale, Dorlichter highlighted that with mobility, especially, there's a lot of fragmentation. When it comes to mobility, the goal for users is to move from one point to another. This is done via public transport, micromobility scooters, and car sharing or personal cars, which need parking spots and charging stations. There are many players involved and always requiring signups with new accounts, new cards, etc. If this is happening on the blockchain, an open ecosystem, then everyone can have seamless experience and find the best services, best parking, and charging spots. According to Busch, decentralized identities of items on open blockchain networks are the most promising technology. I have to agree with that. This is the ultimate data sovereignty because the user owns their own data and keeps it and controls it, he said. In use cases of charging, you can see only the user and the charging pole in the car make that business. No other party around it. I think this has all been translated from German to English. Bush said one of the main goals and motivations of the project is to standardize the technological integration with other automotive players in Germany and across Europe. He also commented that the mobility sector is a great example to big players in the industry and others of how Web3 and decentralization can help with data privacy and compliance in European General Data Protection Regulation. What we are developing is accessible for anyone who can download it. It will be available to all citizens and all of the businesses who would like to use it. Yeah, this makes a lot of sense.
Hey, Mike, I'm here, dude. I was just on a call, bro, but I've been listening. Go ahead.
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense. And when you start talking about all of these sort of connected devices, from vehicles all the way down to micromobility, like the article said, this makes a lot of sense. You need to connect vehicles to charging stations. You need to connect charging stations to infrastructure. You need to connect infrastructure to government regulatory standards. All of this comes full circle. It makes a lot of sense. I'm interested to see where they go with this, but I think that it's definitely a viable market.
Yeah, I want to say, Mike, in man, some conversations from a few years ago, we kind of like modeled out how blockchain would work with micromobility and IoT and all that. I don't know if you recall those conversations. That was maybe from like 2020, 2021.
Yeah, well, I mean,
right, we used to do a lot of blockchain conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and there were times where we actually modeled this type of stuff out. And so, and you know, with Bosch really kind of going in on this, you know, I'm looking at them really sort of taking, say, some of the Chinese business models to the next level and what you were reading. And the one company that stands out in my mind is Xiaomi. Because Xiaomi they were sort of like the pioneer. It was them and Segway or Ninebot. They were sort of like the two pioneers in sort of like doing this whole entire enclosed ecosystem. One other Chinese company to mention is Omni, right? However, Bosch has more sophisticated components, right? A lot of this stuff is it's built to German standards, so you know they over-engineer shit, and they're going to overdevelop this platform too. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of offerings that development brings about.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with this website. Let me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what the hell is that, dude? But with regards to like charging stations and all that kind of stuff, so some of this is, you know, while Mike's getting his screen stuff together here, a lot of this has been in a lot of different variations. A lot of it has been use case, primarily in Asian countries, you know, China specifically, and then there's a few others where they have charging kiosks. You may have mentioned, or you may have remembered on the last Space and Technology, or it was like a prior micromobility live stream, we talked about these charging kiosks in China. It's the same thought.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to the next item on the docket. This is from cleantechnica.com. New York bus electrification moves forward with 53 overhead bus chargers. This should be interesting. In celebration of Climate Week, Governor Kathy Hochul today announced construction is progressing on 53 state-of-the-art overhead electric bus chargers at Metropolitan Transportation Authority depots in Manhattan, Queens, Staten Island, and Brooklyn. The first phase of the multi-year project managed by the New York Power Authority includes building a total of 67 overhead and cable dispensers for New York City Transit across 5 locations to prepare for the 60 new electric buses expected to arrive early next year. The modernized electric infrastructure will support the MTA's growing zero emissions bus fleet throughout New York City, reducing carbon emissions, addressing climate change, and serving as a model for other metropolitan bus fleet operators. Justin E. Driscoll, president and CEO at NYPA, and Frank Inacaro, senior vice president, New York City Transit Department of Buses and MTA Bus Company, toured the Grand Avenue Bus Depot and Central Maintenance Facility in Queens today to witness progress as Climate Week comes to a close. Electrifying our metropolitan bus fleets in the greatest city in the world enables us to showcase New York's leadership when it comes to climate actions that will have a lasting impact, Governor Hochul said. The progress at these in-city bus depots is the latest example of New York building clean energy infrastructure that will improve our air quality and benefit communities that have borne the brunt of a fossil fuel economy. The major transformation of our bus fleet will reduce greenhouse gas emissions, provide system efficiencies, and enable our transition to a zero-emission bus fleet by 2040. Advancing the $54 million electrification project, NYPA contractors this week mounted the first of 17 pantographs on an overhead gantry at the Grand Avenue Bus Depot and Central Maintenance Facility in Queens. This major project involves restructuring the bus depot to accommodate the overhead pantograph dispensers and specific lanes for electric buses to charge. And in related initiative, 14 pantographs are being installed in an in an outdoor lot in East New York and Brooklyn in a single on-street pantograph charger for buses to top off their batteries in between daily runs is being commissioned at the Williamsburg Bridge Plaza in New York. Installations of another 32 overhead and cable dispensers will begin within the next month at the Kingsbridge Depot in Manhattan, which primarily serves the Bronx, and Charleston Depot in Staten Island. Deployment of several cabled chargers are also underway. All work is set to be complete by mid-2024. You know, we talk about EVs and, you know, this sort of emerging tech. They're not playing games. Okay.
This is interesting.
This is where the market is going.
This is interesting.
This is where the market is going.
Yeah. Because typically, you know, like, you know, at one time in New York, they had the trolleys with the overhead, right? That had the arm that stuck to the conductive wire, which powered it, right? And they had that in
Overhead
Frisco.
wire.
You know, they had it in Frisco as well. But this is a new spin on that, right? Because what this does is it raises a boom up to charge, right? And it also has the ability to charge, you know, from a cable right down below, right? You just run a cable to it. You could charge there. But this right here, this is where you sent what they call a pantograph. That's what they call that.
Yeah.
That device right there, right? So they're strategically setting these up along routes and shit. Dude, this is like I'm new to this concept particularly. This is my first time hearing about it. And then when I look at it, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Because typically what you have is you have people who they'll run a line. Right, they run this conduit line, and then they have one of those boom apparatuses that have a connector that touches the wire, but the bus has to run along this wire or this line or what have you, right? Whereas this makes more sense right here. This thing just boop, it sends the boom arm up just to charge, and then lowers it down, and then the bus is out. That's dope. That's dope.
Because it decentralizes the infrastructure, right? And so you don't need the continuous electrical lines over the street, because in the event that you have to move a very big object, right? Like say a rocket or something like that, a rocket engine or something like that, all that infrastructure has to come down. And you can't just keep taking it down and putting it back up. It's just not that easy. And and the technology is kind of antiquated at this point, because battery technology has become so affordable that you can build a fleet of buses that can rapidly charge and move on their way and not have all of the ugly the ugliness of the overhead electrical cables.
Right.
The only reason they kept it in place, up until this point, is because of traditionalism, right? Whoever lived in that neighborhood, they wanted to keep those buses attached to those wires, or those trolleys attached to those wires. Now you don't need to do that anymore. It's kind of obsolete, especially with hydrogen fuel cell, lithium ion batteries, and so on and so forth. It just makes it that much more cost efficient. It's not completely dependent upon that infrastructure. It can, kind of run autonomously. So that's the decentralization of the infrastructure from the vehicle.
Right. That think about it, dude. That looks just like a multi-purpose street light, right? But within this case, what it is, it serves as a charger for a bus. And, when you have those things kind of strategically placed, and as per the article, these things pull up, raise the boom up, top off, boom, they're out of there, right? I mean, this is what creative fourth industrial infrastructure, this is what it looks like, you guys. And this is literally something I've never even seen before, right? Mike, we're talking about like road-based wireless road charging, right? See, so they have like this wireless strip along a road, and what it is that the battery's charging from the bottom of the vehicle. Whereas this right here literally makes a lot more sense. This is just such a simpler solution right here.
Well, most hybrid buses already have this, because like they have to we have the Silver Line out here that does something very, very similar. The bus has to pull over though, and the booms have to go up. They can't launch it on the fly. It doesn't work that way. And so the booms come down, and then the diesel engine kicks in, and then they can move to the airport, which is what the Silver Line is designed for, because there's no electrical overhead for charging the battery of the bus itself. And so what's happening here is that when it goes into the tunnel, the boom drops down and it runs off of battery itself. And then when it gets to the airport, the electric boom is not there for it, and so they have to take it down in order for it to travel into the airport itself. And so that's just not available to them. But this is the next step beyond it. You have it periodically, strategically set up at these locations, because when they have to pick passengers up or drop them off or come to a traffic light or whatever it is, you have that 30 seconds, right? You got 440 volts being driven into that battery. I can guarantee you're gonna put at least 20% into that battery within 30, 60, 90 seconds. That's a lot of time.
So this,
to charge
we're
a battery
talking
with that
like
sort of capacity.
This is like level 5, basically level 5 charging.
Oh, I don't even know. For a city like this, like New York, it's probably at 800 volts.
Well, I was going to say, because if you're filling a battery that big that powers that bus, because you got to remember, like when you look at the size of that bus, basically 2/3 of the floor of the chassis is going to be a battery. So to dump 20% into a battery that big in about you said 90 seconds. That's not uncommon. That's what I'm saying. That's a high speed charger for your ass right there. And but the thing is that for that's what you need. That's literally what you need though. What good is it going to be for these buses to sit for like an hour to charge, right?
Well, those buses the routes that they're on, they're continuously going anyways. And they can continuously go because they have that capacity to do it. I mean, they're not waiting for CNG, which is compressed natural gas, or whatever, diesel, whatever they may have been using in the past. That's obsolete now with the cost of batteries.
Yep. Go ahead, bro. You got it.
Let me go to the next item on the docket from Innovation Origins. These 3 companies give EV batteries a second life. Sustainability. Spent electric vehicle batteries are too good to be discarded. These companies are giving them a second go. Although having used to drive thousands of kilometers, spent electric vehicle batteries can have a second life. The battery pack is the most expensive component of electric vehicles nowadays, and as recycling them is not that easy, it might just be wiser to reuse them for something else. What does a battery do? It stores energy, so why not use discarded EV batteries for stationary storage? These three companies have found a way to kill two birds with one stone, revalorizing batteries and developing new storage technologies, very much in need to stash excess power from solar panels and wind turbines. I'm not going to read all of these. Actually, I'm not going to read any of them. I'm not going to promote these companies, but let me just read the highlights real quick. The battery pack is the most expensive component of an electric vehicle, so why not give them a second life? Catco's designed stationary energy storage using Tesla Model S batteries. B Planet Factory storage units made with EV.
No, I was just going to say Tesla Model S batteries. Those are Panasonic 18650s. Just so you know.
B Planet Factory storage unit made with EV batteries can get up to a megawatt an hour capacity. Connected Energy's eStore caters to commercial uses, stashing up to 360 kilowatts of an hour of batteries. So again, I think we've covered this before in the last piece. If you're a master electrician or a journeyman for that matter, this is where you want to be.
Right.
You don't need to be a coder. You don't need to be a developer. This is that next level of, residential electrical work to big industry, emerging industry technologies of battery recycling.
Well, Mike, check this out. Look at the top menu there. So they have the concentrations right there, right? For the various industries that their services. Can you click okay, because home would be what? Sustainability, right? And then they got mobility.
Everything's sustainability.
No, I'm saying like they have, so if you I think the sustainability tab might be like power walls or I'm guessing, right? But then they have mobility.
You mean?
You see like, I think the menu, click that right there. Let's check this out. Because see, from what they're saying,
no, this is just a site.
Okay. Click mobility.
It doesn't have anything to do with those companies.
Doesn't have anything to do with that? Okay. But essentially, from the highlights, they recondition the batteries or these packs to serve, various industries, right? And I'm thinking what they do is they reclaim batteries. Those cells, those individual cells themselves, they meet a certain threshold. And then I'm pretty sure that what they have is they have some sort of proprietary algorithm in their BMS, right, that better manages the batteries, right? So they do function for the intended purpose that they're designed for. Now, for say like a Tesla, the car, right? So that's why I was like, okay, the first thing that they're doing is they're saying, hey, look, we only use Tesla cells. That's why I wanted to just let everybody know Tesla cells are Panasonics. And they're either the 18650 or the 21700s. And that's just denoting the size of the cell, right? So it would be 18650 means, 18 millimeters in diameter and then 65 millimeters in height. And then 21700 is 70 across and then 21 in height, right? But a 21700 has 30% more capacity than an 18650, even though it's just slightly larger. However, the Tesla cells are the best cells you can get on the market, right? So they recondition Tesla cells for secondary use. And I think what they have is a proprietary BMS stack that better manages reclaimed and reused Tesla batteries.
Well, more importantly, they have a contract with Tesla to get those batteries.
And there's that.
Tesla will more than likely give them all the information.
Right.
Yeah, Tesla will give them all the information they need, contractually speaking, on which batteries are sufficient for repurposing. So,
yep.
Yeah, this next item on the docket is from ABC News. Energy Department announces $325 million for batteries that can store clean electricity longer. The Energy Department announced Friday a $325 million investment in new battery types that can help turn solar and wind energy into 24-hour power. The Energy Department has announced a $325 million investment in new battery types that can help turn solar and wind energy into 24-hour power. The funds will be distributed among 15 projects in 17 states and the Red Lake Nation, a Native American tribe based in Minnesota. Batteries are increasingly being used to store surplus renewable energy so that it can be used later during times when there is no sunlight or wind. The department says the projects will protect more communities from blackouts and make energy more reliable and affordable. Quote, everywhere in the US has issues with intermittent renewable energy. Every day the sun sets and you have to be able to take the energy that you produce during the day and use that at night, said Christopher Ron, a professor of mechanical engineering at Pennsylvania State University. The new funding is for long-term storage, meaning options that can last for longer than 4 hours, typical of lithium-ion batteries. Storage can keep putting out energy from sundown to storage that can keep putting out energy from sundown to sunup, or for several overcast days at a time, is the fervent work of thousands of engineers around the world right now, because it's a serious way to address climate change by allowing natural gas or coal-fired power plants to turn off. Quote, long duration battery storage is like a rainy day savings account for energy storage, said Jody Lukenhaas, a professor of chemical engineering at Texas A&M University. As long as these batteries use earth-abundant materials that are readily available, I do not see any drawbacks, Lukenhaas says, alluding to minerals that need to be mined, including lithium. Quote, regions where solar power and wind power are growing rapidly are often the most interested in the long duration storage. In the US, we see a lot of interest in this technology coming from places like California, New York, and Hawaii, said Amanda Smith, a senior scientist at Project Drawdown, a group that publicizes actions that can be taken to address the climate disruption that has already touched large swaths of the planet. The project features a range of batteries that provide up to 100 hours of power. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but what I'm saying here is that $325 million is nothing to sneeze at. Okay, that's a lot of money to be throwing at this. And what I will say here is, all right, let me share my screen again.
Okay, I was gonna say, Mike, did you cut out? You know, Mike, what I said was lead acid graphene batteries from the last live stream we did.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, Black owners of solar services.
This is where Black people come into the picture. The Department of Energy awards $6.3 million to Black owners of solar services to advance equity in clean energy, business, and workforce development. We've covered this before. I'm just reiterating it, okay? The U.S. Department of Energy's DOE Office of Economic Impact and Diversity today awarded a grant totaling approximately $6.3 million to Black owners of solar services, BOSS. The cooperative agreement establishes a regional effort to coordinate and train minority-owned businesses on how to apply for DOE funding and access DOE programs, benefits, services, and opportunities. BOSS is the largest community of experienced African-American energy professionals working in the solar photovoltaic space. The partnership will make a monumental contribution to the public and, more specifically, minority-owned businesses in the energy sector by reducing barriers to access all areas of the federal government. It will also help foster a collaborative environment to connect entrepreneurs, students, and workers in the clean energy space. This collaboration will have a critical role in helping to advance the Biden-Harris administration's equity and climate goals, said ED Director Shalonda Baker. We have partnered with an organization that is positioned to help us reach critical players in the industry as we strive to increase the participation of minority business owners as we move toward a clean energy future. So what I was saying earlier was that if you're an electrical engineer, a master electrician, journeyman, this is the emerging market that you want to tap into. Mm-hmm. This is where Black people need to be putting their efforts into, this sort of industry where you have $6.3 million being allocated for Black owners of solar services, and then you have $325 million going into batteries that can store clean electricity longer. The two come together. Okay.
Yep.
Not to mention, we just covered overhead charging for busing in New York, one of the first cities to actually, that's going to be the ones to deploy, first to deploy. And so we're seeing a confluence of all of these sort of initiatives coming about. And the question is, where are Black people in this conversation?
Great question.
This is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
I mean, $325 million is, yeah, you know, 6.3 here, 325 here. Jeez.
Well, it'll be interesting to know how much money is going to be allocated for HBCUs and PBIs, PBIs being predominantly Black institutions. This is where, you know, your millennials, your Zennials and your Generation Alphas, those are going to be the ones leading most of these projects, primarily because it takes a couple years to mature and before you even see anything tangible get off the ground. But they're going to be the ones in the academy that's going to be really driving these sort of research projects. Because they have access to the technology, and and you have things like ChatGPT and other sort of Google Bard and other sort of AI co-pilots that's going to help them write the research on this. You know, it makes a lot of sense.
Well, I was going to say, man, you know, given, you know, dude, my daughter's Gen Alpha, her birthday is actually today, right? So happy birthday to my baby cakes. You know, but happy birthday. Yeah, thank you, man. But you know, she's 12. Okay. Let's just fast forward 6, 8, 10 years down the road. Okay. The young adults coming into and looking to get into the emerging markets, that will be for their time, their adulthood, is what you just said. That's literally it. Like, I'm looking at my daughter and her generation of people and all that. And I mean, if I was to ask myself, gee, I wonder what kind of fields they may be looking into getting into. And then what did you just say? For the Gen, what was it? The Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas? This is sort of their lane. Right. So yeah, we're seeing the stage is set for that. You know, so I just, as a parent to a Gen Alpha, I just want to let you know you're spot on with that assessment.
All right, next item on the docket is from the Nevada Independent. Blockchains wanted to build a smart city. The state could not sign off on its water rights. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I'm just going to give you the highlight. In the months leading up to the 2021 legislative session, Blockchains Incorporated was preparing to pitch Nevada lawmakers an ambitious proposal. The private cryptocurrency company effectively sought permission to create its own local government or innovation zone with Story County. It already owned ample land. By 2018, it acquired roughly 67,000 acres in and around the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center. What it needed to construct the city in the high desert was water. Before briefing lawmakers on its plans, blockchains quietly purchased a portfolio of water rights valued at about $35 million, hundreds of miles away from its land north of Reno, Sparks. In order to get the water to the city, it would have to pipe it across a region of Nevada that included the Pyramid Lake Piatu tribes reservation and the Black Rock Desert, home to Burning Man. Such a pipeline would likely face permitting challenges, including opposition from environmental groups and rural communities. Yet, another big hurdle unfolded throughout 2021, a title dispute. That dispute would end with the company, once embraced by Governor Steve Sisolak, suing the state of Nevada for not officially recognizing the ownership of its water rights last month. A judge ruled in favor of the state, leaving blockchains blocked from using the water. Anyways, here's the deal. Because I hear this a lot from Black people who are like these nationalists, right? Who are talking about creating their own cities, and you can just start cities up and you can create your own towns and have this own, Black town or Black city or whatever it is, right? This is the sort of bureaucracy you're going to run into. This is not easy. You want to create your own city? Good luck. Doesn't work that way. It's not that easy. These people,
city, right?
Well, a smart city you can always develop, man. I mean, that's not on paper. That's easy, but when you try to actually, put the the shovel into the ground, that's where the trouble starts.
Yeah.
And so you need water to survive. I mean, you can kind of get away with everybody being vegan and not eating meat, but you can't survive without the water, and you need massive amounts of it. A city can go through a million gallons of water within a couple hours. That's not uncommon, and so this is very important for Black people who want to isolate themselves or live on their own plantation, whatever you call it, their own infrastructure. It's not that easy. You're going to run into this sort of bureaucracy. But I bring it up because they had all of the necessary equipment and blueprints in place to build a smart city, and the first thing they run into from a challenge is water.
Yeah,
I think the next world war is going to be over clean. I think the next world war is going to be over clean water.
Really? That's an interesting position.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
what happens when California runs out of
like
water? You think they're going to raid?
Well, I mean, we got replenished last year with all that rain, but I will say this: if you guys, look into what has gone on, let's just say over like the past 20 to 25 years, right? Which majority of those years are actually drought years out here, right? And whether you guys know this or not, California's water is actually split in two. So there's the northern California, like the Sierras and all that, right? Then when you come down here, our water comes through the I forgot which river that is, right? And so that river serves Southern California, Nevada, primarily Las Vegas, and then Arizona as well. And so there's always, during the drought years, a fight for water between California, Nevada, and Arizona. NorCal doesn't really necessarily have to deal with that. Their water source comes from up north above, right? So there's even from a state's level, there's a fight for water, depending on where you are, where you're located, and all of that. There was also some stuff that went down in Arizona with regards to a foreign-owned company that is growing alfalfa out there. And so during this past spring and summer and stuff, they were having water shortages out there, but these people seemingly were able to get access to a ton of water for pennies on the dollar. And a lot of people were complaining about it. So, water is a commodity. And that's why I was like, Mike, that's an interesting position that you take, because I could kind of see that.
Yeah. I mean, I watched a episode, this is an old episode of I I forget the name of the show, man. It's like Survivor or something like that. But I've heard somebody in the manosphere trying to reference it, like, you know, you can drink your own urine. Bruh. Good luck, man.
Excuse me?
Yeah. Oh, so in the episode of this Survivor show, it was with these two guys. One was Cody and the other one was some ex-military Navy SEAL guy. And they got trapped in on some kind of island or something like that. And this dude decided that he was going to drink his own urine, this Navy SEAL guy. Because they didn't have any access to water. And so he drank it and then he spit it back out.
Okay, dude.
Because it wasn't drinkable. It's just one of those things where he thought that, because either he drinks the ocean water, the salt water, or he drinks his urine. And so there was a dilemma. Okay, so what are you going to do? And so he couldn't drink the ocean water. It was too salty. But then he tried to drink his own urine, and that didn't work either. And so what I'm saying here is,
did he have the ability?
War over water is.
I was just going to ask, did he have the ability to start a fire?
I forget the episode. I forget what exactly happened in the episode, but I know specifically he tried to drink it on his own and he spit it back out.
I was going to say,
what I'm saying here is,
why don't you just boil the salt water, right? The water that collects, what you have to do is boil salt water, and then you have like a bowl that collects the vapor that comes up. And what you have to do is you have to do it in a way where you can get the drips to go into a cup, and that water is good to drink. That's why I was like, you don't have to drink your piss, bro. That's like a very rudimentary way of desalinating water. Yeah, you capture the steam coming out from the water being boiled, and then you channel that and let that drip off into a different receptacle. That water's clean to drink. Wow, piss, huh? All right.
Well, that sounds like a truism.
Ah, hey-o.
All right, man. This next item on the docket is from Al Jazeera. African healthcare poses challenges to startups fill in the gaps. Startups trying to help African public health systems cater to the needs of everyday people say that they face barriers too. Three months after she was born, Ayatunde Omitegun was diagnosed with an aortic septal defect, ASD, a birth defect that causes a hole in the heart. In 2013, 26 years later, she was diagnosed with pulmonary hypertension, PH, caused by the untreated defect. In India, where she went for surgery, doctors prescribed drugs to help manage her condition, but because they were not available in Lagos, where Omitogun lived, she had to rely on Nigerian patients traveling from India. Then COVID-19 happened, no one could travel. Quote, so I was on and off my drugs, which made me fall sick. Omitogun, now 36, told Al Jazeera. In search of an alternative, Ayatunde reached out to a brand she had come across on Twitter earlier this year. Pharmacy Africa. Founded in 2020, it is a Nigeria-based health tech startup in Nigeria built to digitize doorstep delivery of medications and routine checkups. It is one of a new generation of startups seeking to help Africans overcome hurdles in healthcare on a continent where half of the 1.2 billion people cannot access quality healthcare. The lag is mostly due to an underfunding of the sector. This year, Nigeria allocated 1.5 trillion naira, $2 billion to the sector, less than 10% of the overall budget. Like some of its neighbors, it falls short of a commitment by African leaders at the 2001 Abuja declaration to allocate 15% of its budget to the health sector. Consequently, government hospitals usually lack the necessary infrastructure to carry out critical surgeries. Patients are often left unattended due to frequent strikes by doctors and other medical professionals or personnel. Nurses in Zimbabwe still earn only about $50 a month, and Lome hospital administrators say there are now more Togolese doctors in France than there are in Togo. No wonder then that a June 2022 survey by the World Health Organization found that Africa has a ratio of 1.55 health workers per 1,000 people. Drugs are often off the shelf more than they are on it in public dispensaries across sub-Saharan Africa. And in some cases, the available drugs have turned out to be fake or expired. Quote, Africa has faced a long history of local health supply chains being susceptible to the influx of substandard products. Judy Giatti, a senior consultant at Canada-based Salient Advisory, told Al Jazeera. Specifically, the Gambia announced that substandard cough syrup was responsible for the deaths of at least 70 children in 2022. But Ayinka Shitu, a researcher at Health Law Nigeria, a health ethics and law consulting firm, says Africa's booming population is also contributory factor to the dearth of resources. UN projections are that it will increase from 1.2 billion today to 2 billion by 2050. So existing services are not adequate and thus is driving the need for the tech market, Shitu said. Across the world, tech is gaining more attention for its potential to spark innovation. Indeed, a number of startups have emerged in recent years with technological solutions to fill these gaps. Online pharmacies have introduced virtual consultation services and counterfeit drug detection measures. In countries like Rwanda, drone delivery services are taking emergency health products to remote communities. According to a July 2023 market intelligence report by Salient Advisory, a Pan-African healthcare research advisory, there are about 350 startups helping bypass long-running challenges around efficient distribution of quality health products in Africa. Many of these startups experienced a boom during COVID-19 pandemic as the public systems ground to a halt. The report added data-driven approaches can reverse long-standing norms in public supply chains historically hobbled by inefficiencies. Some are now partnering with governments too. Kenya-based Maisha Meds, for instance, is a digital network of private pharmacies and clinics that has raised over $25 million in funding since it was founded in 2017. It is now working on a health insurance plan to help low-income households tackle cases of malaria and entrench family planning. The government has started to inquire about the software used, so we work with some government clinics and dispensaries in Kenya. Its founder, Jessica Vernon, told Al Jazeera. However, some of these startups also are also encountering difficulties in going mainstream. Analysts like Diathi predict reduced funding in 2023 amid a global economic slowdown. Already, some startups have undergone rounds of layoffs to cut down costs. This August, London-based Babylon Health, whose platform integrated artificial intelligence, filed for bankruptcy despite being once valued at nearly $2 billion. It had a partnership with Rwanda to deliver virtual primary healthcare there and had over 2.8 million users. Last October, Nigerian genomics research firm 54Gene laid off 100 employees this September. It began winding down operations. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but what I'm going to say to you is this. We're already seeing the lack of funding in the Black community when it comes to startups. Okay, Black people America. Okay, you factor in what we're seeing right now with Africans and their startups having to lay people off, having to shut down operations. due to lack of funding, it's not that difficult to understand that we have to start working together and creating our own ecosystems, because there is no other way. We've tried the other ways and they're not working. Okay. A company that was a startup that was valued at $2 billion is now worth nothing, all because they don't have the access to the actual funding that they need to make things work. And so we need a Pan-African fund. We need a Pan-African fund that helps Black people in America and Black and Africans on the continent come together and start really focusing on scaling up startups and actually collectivizing our resources on the ground financially and human capital wise. This is the only way we're going to actually move forward.
I mean, you're essentially talking about just, a Y Combinator, but, more centralized on, like you said, international activity when it comes to, Black folks here in the States and the continent, right? You got to have like a sort of like an incubator in the Y Combinator sense, right? That
well,
really
Y Combinator is a kind of a different sort of platform, right? You have to go through the Y Combinator involves, going through pitches and
but Mike, I don't necessarily
yeah.
mean all that, because I know exactly what you're talking about, right? And that's kind of what we want to avoid, right? But I'm talking about in terms of the purpose of what it serves. I mean, we would want to have that, but not that shit that you were just talking about. I agree.
Yeah, no, I'm saying we need a Pan-African startup fund where, let's use the Manosphere, for example. I was watching a live stream the other day that has 300 plus people in there talking about gibberish, okay? If you had those 300 Black men in that space contribute, let's say, every Black man put up $1,000, okay, times 300. That's $300,000. That's over $250,000 from one live stream. Now, Africans have their own issues with their economy and their finance, but that's immaterial to what we're capable of doing. Now, you multiply 300 to 600, 900 to 1,000. You take 1,000 Black men who have, $1,000 invested each. What do you think the outcome is going to be? That's $1 million.
Not only that, but I honestly, I think you'll see, to market production of products. I think because there's ample. Well, number one, what we're doing is we're spreading the investment across the board, right? That's the first thing we're doing, right?
Well,
so instead of being beholden to say like one investor, there's what you just said. We're doing is we're aggregating it, we're spreading it across. There's more people you're beholden to, so there's more of an intrinsic responsibility to produce. That's why I think that one of the things that we would see out of this is actually some production.
Yeah, because like the article is saying that Africa has a lot of healthcare issues. There's 350 startups over there. They don't have all the proper funding. Okay, we have a lot of issues over here with public health access too, and other sort of environmental and renewable climate change and climate impact issues. Let's take all of the immediate issues that's on the books. Let's create an agenda. What are the things that are most probable? What are the things that we can tackle? And what are the things that are most achievable? And let's put the resources behind that. And then let's move methodically between each agenda that is impacting both Black people in America and on the continent. And we put the money behind that rather than to just, every other startup raises this much money. No, one startup address multiple issues, one fund. That should be how that should work in that capacity. It should work like that. But
I mean,
people would call me,
but
people would call me a communist for saying that.
Well,
That's essentially what communism is.
But you know what? Here's the thing, dude. You and I both know that even how things work today in a capitalist society, right? At a certain level, there is a bit of a socialist element to when we're talking about corporations and how it is that they're able to move within society, tax evasion with regards to corporate, taxes and stuff like that. See, there's things that are afforded to corporations that aren't afforded to the individual. And so that's why it's like, Mike, that I understand what you're saying, but let's be real, dude, that's kind of like a nothing. That's a nothing burger, right? Because we could make the same argument for corporations, right? So if it's good for them, why not good for you? And vice versa. So maybe we actually consider what you're talking about. We say, well, why don't we consider that employing the same thing that every other corporation employs? That you, by the way, as the individual consumer, support. Everybody's got Apple products, right? Well, go look up how much money in taxes and shit like that Apple's paid. So what I think you're talking about is more of a fair and equitable.
In reality, it's a communist solution, but these guys don't. These guys. If I say that, if I say that, then they're going to flip out and say, "Oh, I don't agree with this." You technocracies. I don't agree with technocracies. I have pushback for that. What are you talking about, man? What are you talking about?
Mike, let's not go down that rabbit hole right now, please.
This is just another truism. That's all. All right, next item on the docket.
I told you don't do that.
Next item on the docket is from Business Insider. See the AI project African scientists are collaborating on. A team of African researchers are dedicating their efforts to the development of advanced artificial intelligence tools tailored specifically for African languages. Kathleen Simonu of the Marcashane Research Foundation emphasized that widely utilized AI technologies like ChatGPT, a text generator, and a voice-activated assistant like Siri are inaccessible to billions of individuals who do not speak dominant languages like English, French, or Spanish. This underscores the need for greater inclusivity and representation in the field of language technology advancement. Quote, "It doesn't make sense to me that there are limited AI tools for African languages. Inclusion and representation in the advancement of language technology is not a patch you can put at the end. It's something you think about up front," Ms. Simios noted. These specialized tools often rely on a natural language processing and AI field enabling computers to comprehend human languages. Training allows computers to grasp languages by identifying patterns in speech and text data. However, when data is in a specific language, is scarce, as seen with African languages, the technology falls short. To bridge this gap, the research team initially identified key stakeholders engaged in the development of African language tools. Content creators such as writers and editors and linguists, software engineers and entrepreneurs delved into their experiences, motivations, focuses, and challenges, all essential in establishing the infrastructure for language tools. In-depth discussions with these stakeholders revealed 4 fundamental factors when designing African language tools. First, it is crucial to address Africa's multi-language context, recognizing the enduring impact of colonization. Indigenous language hold immense cultural value alongside their vital role in education, politics, and economics. Secondly, supporting the creation of African content is imperative. This involves crafting basic tools such as dictionaries, spell checkers, and keyboards for African languages. It also entails removing financial and administrative obstacles for translating government communications into multiple national languages, encompassing African languages. Furthermore, fostering collaboration between linguistics and computer science is key. These fields intersect to yield human-centered innovation solutions. Ethical practices and community involvement throughout data collection and utilization are equally important considerations. The next phase for the team involves addressing barriers that may impede people's access to this technology. Their study aims to provide a roadmap for the development of various language tools ranging from translation services to content moderators targeting misinformation. Sounds like they could be well utilized in the manosphere. And just by the way, Sinedu Okafor is the author of this article. Sounds like he's Nigerian. So when I was on the continent, right, back during the pandemic, we had this conversation about how do you leverage, let me take this back. Africans are locked out of a lot of these emerging technologies primarily because they're Western dominant. And so you would have to create your own stuff from scratch. And so you're going to have to think about building technologies from the ground up that reflect the languages within the region and on the continent as a whole. I don't think there's a dedicated language on the continent right now. I think Swahili is like the proposed language, but I don't think it's the dominant or the chosen dominant language. But what I'm saying here is the iPhone is not going to solve this problem, nor is Android. You're going to have to build your own operating system. You're going to have to build your own hardware from the ground up that reflects all of these sort of nuances on the continent. And that's the only way you're really going to solve a lot of these issues. Instead of trying to Westernize, the technology for yourselves, you're going to have to, decenter the whiteness from your emerging technologies and create it from the ground up that reflects that of African interests. So,
I mean, it has to be general use, bro. Right? Intuitive, and what do they say? So simple a caveman can do it.
mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to reference. Don't take that as any sort of reference to like Africa. What you're saying. I'm using the Geico slogan from some years back, right? I mean, I think that's what we're looking at is a general use application where it has application in multiple markets. No, not only nationally but globally. Okay, when you think about Ubers and Airbnb and things like that, right? That's general use. Everybody uses it, right? So it's thinking about it in much the same manner. You got Ike up here?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Big Ike, what's good with you?
I'm good. How are you, Complex? And
feeling, bro. Sunday, man.
Yes. So, and Mike V, perhaps I'm one of those people that got agitated and it's getting conniption fits with your nascent communism or whatever. But I was trying to figure out what you guys meant by the aspects of like a Y Combinator that you guys are trying to avoid. The one word I heard was pitching, right? And I can kind of imagine what that whole world is, what I can extrapolate from that whole pitching aspect. But what regarding the Y Combinator kind of model with regards to selecting and putting capital to what about that model are you trying to avoid? Of course, there may be many things. This is not a challenge of somewhere like, oh, this is a perfect model. I was just actually interested in hearing what you guys mean.
Mike? No, because you're just asking the question. Yeah.
No, what I was basically alluding to is that you have one startup. Hold on one second.
All right. Well, I'm in the car, but while Mike is on hold, Well, I don't want to speak for Mike, so I'll kind of just maybe speak to my own experiences. So, Ike, like for me, my first sort of tech entrepreneurial sort of pursuit came, around 1999, 2000, when I started a website and I was dealing and selling, vinyl music, CDs and stuff like that from independent hip hop artists, right? And then from there, it sort of turned into distribution and all these other things. But early on, I had met with like a few, VC type people, angel investor type people. And, I remember like you had companies that were selling diapers. They were getting millions of dollars, right? Whereas I had a pitch for music, which is something that everybody consumes on a daily basis. And I don't know, the pitch just, for whatever reason, right? And now, am I gonna fully attribute it to racism? No. I was very young at the time, right? Perhaps there were some things on my end that I just wasn't privy to. I didn't have the right mentorship or coaching in my earlier entrepreneurial years. Perhaps that was the case, right? But I would also say as well, there were the cases where there were, let's say like white dudes or Asian cats that were much like in my same position, but it seemed as though the capital was readily there. So sometimes, I was left with the question of, well, what is it that I'm doing wrong? So the only thing that forced me to do was to go get a goddamn second job and then pay somebody to do the website development. And then as that was being done, I had that person teach me what it is I needed to learn. They became a partner of mine, but it was sort of like, from what Mike is, again, I don't want to put my words in Mike's mouth, right? So I'm just kind of going to speak to myself. I do recall some of the challenges at that time, right? And, for companies that completely flamed out after receiving 10, 15, 20 million dollars versus where I put my own sweat equity and money in, and then we saw profits literally 4, 5, 6 months in, that taught me a very valuable lesson, right? Now, with all that being said, I can still see the benefit of a Y Combinator type of vehicle, but that doesn't necessarily have I guess you could say, the onboarding process, right, that a Y Combinator has. Maybe we can formulate a different model. I think maybe that's what Mike was alluding to.
Got it. I don't know if Mike is back, but we can continue down this particular line here.
Yeah, go ahead, man. You got it, bro. If Mike jumps in, he'll be here. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just came back. I had to see one of my neighbors.
Okay, all right.
So
no
let me elaborate on what I was saying. Essentially, instead of having multiple startups, like 300 startups, in Africa and in the United States, one startup solve the issues that is most impactful, make sure that they're actionable, and then let's move methodically to each and every item on the agenda. Kind of like a IBM. IBM doesn't just do computers, they do technology. They don't focus on one thing, they focus on multiple things. Right? They invented the ATM as we know it today. And they invented, big mainframes and stuff like that. And so what I'm saying is they don't just focus on these one things. We try to solve these issues by raising money independently, but it never seems to work, like the article was saying. Once the market gets a hiccup, then you start losing money, and next thing you know, you're out of business. You have to lay people off and so on and so forth. I think if we try an alternative, like I'm proposing, I think that may be more tangible in the long run, because then we're not, we're raising our own money into this, but we're also solving a lot of the issues because we have more hands and more heads and more human capital involved to solving a lot of these problems.
There are two aspects that one at least two aspects that one could divide this for the purposes of just maybe one more volley here on this particular topic. One aspect is the money aspect, right? So let's put that to one side for now. And then let's talk about this particular company that you're talking about. Let's say the difference is, it is big, it is systematic. It's almost like a government. Let's say like it's the Manhattan Project, right? It's not just any company, the Manhattan Project. We're going to solve nuclear, whatever. It's the main thing, right? That kind of a thing. So it's kind of like large coordinated stuff, which by the way, it's not just the case that it's only in the private sector that we no longer see that kind of thing. Basically, governments don't do that kind of stuff anymore. Ever since the Manhattan Project, what has the American government done similar to that, where it was like coordinated, large, and happened, right? We can't even freaking build a net underneath the freaking Bay Bridge, right? Without it costing billions and whatever, right? So there is a particular issue going on system-wide with regards to large-scale, organized, targeted efforts, okay? There's another thing though, which is this startup which you described is in itself also a startup. It's like the startup of startup. It's still one company, but it's hoping to be a successful company that becomes a monopoly. It's like saying right from the onset, I'm gonna start Google, right? Because Google can do whatever it wants with all this freaking extra cash, right? And it can send balloons to space and try to solve this, that kind of stuff. So
they're government funded.
Kind of I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
It's government fund. They're government funded. That's why they can do things like that.
So yeah, exactly what you're saying. You want to get there. The thing about that thing is, I still suspect that it is subject to the initial laws of chaos. In other words, if you start out trying to get there, you're probably not going to. Somebody will, but it's got to be at least 7 MFers trying to get there, right? If that makes sense. So the only kind of pushback I have there with regards to this notion, I have no issue with large-scale coordinated efforts, right? And I think that it's something that we've kind of lost a lot of faith in. Secondly, though, I don't think that you could just start a Google, right? Or start a Microsoft, because there's no way these MFers knew that they were going to get there, even though, like Dan Cote, for example, he's also a government. The government has to come in at some point, right? But not everybody. It's not a random like, oh, I want to be that guy and then I become that guy. I hope that makes sense. I still think that there's got to be some kind of natural evolution, natural selection. It's not all about capitalism. I'm just saying that given the way things work, right? This kind of element of, well, you cannot just know that you're going to be this thing just because you plan it, but that there has to be some kind of a little bit of a fight, a little bit of a Thunderdome that happens. And then, oh, cool, now we have a Microsoft. Or, oh, cool, we have a Google. That it cannot be a foregone conclusion. But that is only a hypothesis. I just wonder if you can actually plan and execute something like that as a singular effort.
It's something to think about. But I think there's another item on the docket I'm going to cover that kind of highlights what I'm thinking. Let me get to that real quick. All right, next item on the docket is from grist.org. California installs 10,000 EV fast chargers, but needs quadruple that. The state has installed a record number of EV fast chargers, but it's still not enough to keep pace with the future demand. I'm not going to read this whole thing. More than a year of a state deadline, California has installed 10,000 fast chargers for electric vehicles, the latest in a series of recent milestones in the state's race to eliminate greenhouse gas emissions from passenger vehicles. Direct current fast chargers, or DCFC, play an important role in the transition to electric vehicles because they are a driver's best option to quickly recharge a battery while on the road. Fast chargers typically offer power outputs between 50 kilowatts to 350 kilowatts, and some can charge an EV battery to 80% in as quickly as 20 minutes. We talked about that earlier. In contrast, the next fastest type of charger, a level 2, takes between 4 to 10 hours to reach the same level of charge. In 2018, former Governor Jerry Brown issued an executive order that mandated the state install 250,000 EV chargers. including 10,000 fast chargers by 2025. Since then, the state has nearly quadrupled the number of public and shared private chargers installed at places of businesses or apartment buildings. Fast chargers to hit its target from around 2,600 to more than 10,000. The future of transportation, and it's happening right now. And it's happening right now all across California. Governor Gavin Newsom said Monday on the Climate Week NYC New York, where he made the announcement. So this kind of falls in line with what we talked about earlier. I think a lot of Black men who are master electricians, journeymen, I think you should be looking at getting into this market. It's one of the fastest growing markets. It's going to be around for the next 50 years. So you can't go wrong.
I didn't know if I had if there was something, a reply or a response you wanted to give me.
Oh, not in this particular regard here. Now, other than when you say something like that, Mike, I always wonder about, like you say, okay, there are areas in which Black men should focus on or they should be going into. What do you mean by that? And by that, I mean, is there a target audience for that? Is there a place where perhaps this target audience is supposed to be there listening and then deciding to, like, again, moving to that notion of targeted, maybe not large scale, but like a targeted thing here. When you say, it's almost like telling people that they need to drink water or they need to breathe air. I'm wondering who the target audience is, where are they? And does that make sense, Mike B?
So when I say that, it's because the target audience, our majority, 80% of our audience are Black men by the numbers. A lot of Black men in this space are not in the tech industry or emerging industries. And so when we cover these articles, the way we address it is from informing people and synthesizing the information so that they can understand what they should put on their radar and what kind of information is going to be actionable and not actionable, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. And so Black people, and more specifically Black men, are the most underrepresented demographic in these industries. And so when I say that Black men should be focusing on the EV charging industry, I'm saying if you're electrical, and if you're an electrician, a master electrician, journeyman, or something like that, we covered this earlier, that the Department of Energy and the federal government have allocated resources so that you can actually get into this industry. Is that making sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Now, is there a place where Black men are overrepresented? Like, is it government work or something like that?
NBA,
or
NFL?
Okay.
Mike, dude, shut up, man. Mike, dude, come on.
Though, right?
Say that again, Ike.
I mean, that's like a tiny, that's like, okay, NBA is a small organization. These are small organizations. All the other working Black men out
organizations, there, wealthy organizations.
You're correct. You're correct.
Yeah.
How about the average Joes out there? Are they overrepresented in any particular industry?
The prison industrial complex?
Barbershops. Listen, Ike, really, the whole thing here is, look, either we can have this conversation or the conversation about how AI is going to take over whatever job you do have. Right? Potato, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, at a certain point, bro, rubber meets road.
And I think a lot of these DEI initiatives, I know a lot of conservatives push back on this, has been developed to actually help foster these sort of efforts, right? We covered an article the other day on Black Economics Talk, PayPal, Walmart dumping $800,000, $1 million into these training programs to get who? The majority of them that are going to be taking on these efforts would be Black men. And so it's not that difficult to understand that the underrepresentation is due to the the biases in the hiring practices as well as the industry itself. And so how do we make sure that Black men who are looking to transition out of their current roles, because a lot of guys are not going to admit, I talk to people every week, and a lot of guys are in positions that are dead end. They're not going anywhere in that position. And if they don't skill up, they are going to find themselves miserable for the rest of their life.
Mm-hmm. I see. So there's racism, and also there's a idea of racism, and this leads people to not go in a particular direction. So now that you're telling them, hey, they should be looking there, right? What are they going to find there? The boogeyman or whatever? Like, okay, is it the case? Because you get what I'm saying, right? You say there are racist practices, but still you're telling them to go over there. Now,
No. What I'm saying,
they could get the job, right?
Oh, no. What I'm saying here is the traditional industries had a lot of racism. Okay. These emergent industries are wide open right now.
They're wide open.
Got it.
And we're also talking about a different cultural paradigm altogether.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And this, so what we're not going to do, and see, this is where I really do defer to Mike on a lot of like the DEI and, all these various different types of social concepts, because whether people view them as controversial or not, it is highly subjective. However, we would be remiss to not acknowledge that at the onset of the growth of a lot of publicly traded companies and corporations and stuff like that, you largely didn't see Black faces that were in the mix like that, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, you didn't. Okay, so in this new paradigm that we're in now, though, dude, things have changed, right? Did racism disappear as a result of this paradigm shift? No. So this is the reason why we do make sure to highlight the fact that, hey, even though what we may be saying is, it sounds pie in the sky, it sounds very very, very like wishful thinking type stuff, but then we also throw a dose of reality in here about racism. Yeah, Mike?
Absolutely. And that's, we've covered
we also have to
this.
acknowledge reality. Go ahead.
Yeah, and we've covered this from many, the venture capital scene. We've talked about how the underfunding of Black people in the startup industry, or I should say Black startups as a whole. We've had Ken Frazier on Harvard Business Review openly say that when it comes to gender, people lean in, but when it comes to Black people, or in terms of race, they lean out. This is a Western thing, right? But I'm saying these emerging areas, those same people that did a lot of discrimination and caused a lot of the biases are not there anymore. So now, when we start talking about getting into these areas, we've covered this before, but we know that the federal government, the current administration has allocated billions of dollars in resources and initiatives from HBCUs to PBIs to MSIs and other foundations. We've had private investors, PayPal, Google, fund Black startups, $100 million here, $50 million here, $2 million here. There's a lot of resources floating around. We're trying to consolidate that with these articles, and we're trying to point Black men in these proper directions. Now, not to say that anybody else can't take advantage of it, but a lot of the times, Black men are always the ones being left behind in these industries, these emergent industries. And so we're trying to make sure that people have the right information at the end of the day, so that they understand that, because I talk to people all the time here locally in Boston that are trying to get in. And when I shoot them the links, they're like, oh man, I didn't know anything about this.
And well, Mike, it's also the same reason why we also highlighted that I think it was on the last maybe one or two micromobility live streams. Bro, who's the face of this industry right about now?
It's Black men right now.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Black men have become the face of these sort of new emerging industries because there's a attempt to decenter whiteness from it. And we know that white men in the venture capitalist sector are funding other white startups. Name and point, Theranos. Theranos raised billions of dollars for a product that didn't exist. It was vaporware. Nobody knows where the money is, and no one questions it, right? But the apprehension of investing into Black startup is that, well, we don't really trust it.
Right? Yeah, I mean, but you got Henry Kissinger on your board. Was it Henry Kissinger or was it the other secretary of?
She had somebody major. I think that's how she got. I think that's how she got out of doing her prison sentence because she got preggers or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice move. So not to monopolize the conversation, but then I mentioned that there was a money aspect of this, and to that end, I'm talking about currency in general. So right now, anyone who is not the U.S. has to play second fiddle with regards to the dollar having the deepest liquidity and being the thing. It can be weaponized. They can use the SWIFT thing against you, blah, blah, blah. Everybody wants dollars and nobody wants to deal with your dusty currency, hence. And it's got the deepest pool, it's most stable, all that kind of stuff, right? So the US has the dollar, right? And if you are low in the totem pole, like certain African countries, then you need the dollar. So you're not, let's say, even producing things that you consume because you need to produce cash crops, which are things that you sell so that you can get dollars, so that you can maybe hope to buy some machines or such and such, or do certain types of things that involve foreign exchange. So the point is, if you're looking towards any kind of a Pan-African solution, whereby obviously if you're in the West, you have access to dollars, that's not it has a set of problems, but you're not one of those countries that needs to do some crazy stuff in order to get dollars. Now, there's certain kinds of solutions, like, for example, if I'm Ghana, you're Nigeria, and we can agree to you produce X quantity of palm oil, I produce Y quantity of rice. We bypass this whole intermediary of the dollar. And we kind of trade, which is basically what the whole kind of, what do they call themselves? The losers squad with China and what is the, is there
who? BRICS?
Yeah, BRICS. Yeah. I like to call them the loser squad, but tongue in cheek and whatnot, right? But it is what it is. Which is one of the major aspects of BRICS is a minor de-dollarization. I'm not saying just say, oh, it's going to de-dollarize like magically. No, that's not going to happen. That's like draining. When I say that's not going to happen, I mean not in any time that is effective for our lifetimes, right? Because you're trying to drain a particular ocean. But the intermediate effect is for nations to start trading amongst themselves without needing that recourse of getting the dollar, because that needing to get the dollar makes you behave in particular ways, such as the cash crop that I described. Rather than grow mangoes that you eat locally, you grow rubber so that you send it out just because you need the dollar, right? So if you're going to deal with Africa in any major way, now I'm talking about major, the view should always be towards that internal trade, because currency is all about facilitation of that trade, right? Internal trade where there's a trust of some kind of, either I just trust that you're going to give me that palm oil and I'm going to give you the rice, or we trust our local currency up to a certain level because of some other kind of BRICS type of multipolar blah, 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 and such and such. But that is a major issue that the Africans have to overcome, is making a hard currency, or at least trading internally, which is the way that you get past the dollar hegemony, right? Because I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say that the Africa DeFi Summit just happened in Ghana a few weeks ago. So those are the sort of conversations that they're having over there. It's not outside of the realm that they're thinking about this. This has been talked about for as long as I've been going to the continent, to these events. They've been having these conversations, and they're very close to trying to reach their goal in terms of what they're trying to do. And so the decentralization, the decoupling.
I was going to say there's a very concerted effort to decouple.
Yeah, they are thinking about alternative ways to raising capital and as well as scaling up, startups on the continent. And so that's why I kind of introduced, the Pan-African perspective, because you can't move forward. I don't think that Black people in America can move forward without Africans being at the table too. And I don't think that Africans are going to be able to move forward without having African Americans or Black Americans at the table. I think that's just unrealistic. But we see the money that is being floated about. I think that we should actually be thinking of ways of, if you do come across some of these monies, there has to be a plan of action in play so that you can hit the ground running. But let me hit these last two items on the docket, and we can close out. All right. Next item on the docket is from Cointelegraph. Nigerian government supports AI initiatives with $290,000 in grants. The recently introduced Nigerian Artificial Intelligence Research Scheme is designed to facilitate the of Communications, Innovation, and Digital Economy. Bosun Tijani revealed on Friday, October the 13th, that the government intends to grant 5 million naira, $6,444, to 45 artificial intelligence-focused startups and researchers. This initiative was disclosed by the minister in a post on X, formerly Twitter, and is a part of the recently introduced Nigeria Artificial Intelligence Research Scheme, which is designed to facilitate the widespread utilization of AI to drive economic advancement. As outlined on the scheme's official website, the focus areas include agriculture, education, and workforce, finance, governments, healthcare, utility, and sustainability. To be eligible for a grant, applicants must form a consortium comprising as a startup or tech company, a researcher from Nigerian university, or foreign researcher, according to the ministry. See, that's exactly what I was saying here, a consortium, okay? This is exactly what I was talking about. I was not, able to grasp that word immediately at the time, but this is exactly what I'm saying. And that's how you would actually fund it. And so I think that Nigeria's startup bill also is testament to what we need here at the state level, because I don't think you can get it passed in the House right now with these yo-yos in control. But I'm saying this is a high level of exactly what I'm talking about. This can be done. This doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it just makes a lot of sense that, we lean on government. Elon Musk was able to raise $800 million from the federal government for Tesla, which is how it got off the ground. I don't see why we don't do the same thing, for ourselves. I think that there are ways we can actually finagle this. It just has to be well thought out.
Well, Mike, that goes back to the whole notion of, right, it's like, if it's good for them, why not good for us?
Right.
You get what I'm saying? Like that's kind of, this sort of maybe the central theme I want to kind of circle back to. I mean, because you just brought up Tesla. Now everybody will look at Elon Musk as a flex point, so to speak, right? But then when you go ahead and then say, well, you did receive $800 million from the government, well, goddamn, right? That's plenty of money to get some shit done, yeah? So I'm just saying, dude, if it's good for them, why not for us?
Yeah. All right, next item on the docket is from Reuters. Ferrari to accept crypto as payment for its cars in the US. Ferrari has started to accept, let me zoom in on this, has started to accept payment in cryptocurrencies for its luxury sports cars in the US and will extend the scheme to Europe following requests from its wealthy customers, its marketing and commercial chief told Reuters. The vast majority of blue chip companies have steered clear of crypto as the volatility of Bitcoin and other tokens renders them impractical for commerce. Patchy regulation and high energy usage have also prevented the spread of crypto as a means of payment. These include electric car maker Tesla, which in 2021 began to accept payment in Bitcoin, the biggest crypto coin, before CEO Elon Musk halted it because of environmental concerns. Ferrari's chief marketing and commercial officer, Enrico Galleria, told that Reuters cryptocurrencies had made efforts to reduce their carbon footprint through introduction of new software and a larger use of renewable resources. Quote, our target to reach for carbon neutrality by 2030 along our whole value chain is absolutely confirmed, he said in an interview. Ferrari said the decision came in response to requests from the market and dealers, as many of its clients have invested in crypto. Quote, some of the young investors who have built their fortunes around cryptocurrencies, he said. Some others are more traditional investors who want to diversify their portfolios. This is the way of the market, okay?
Mike, I have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
And this is, I'm literally asking from an informational standpoint, because this is just something that popped across the news feed over the past week or two. I mean, maybe you've heard something about this. So there apparently was a vote in the House with regards to CBDCs. Did you hear about this?
Yeah.
And it was voted down, if I'm not mistaken. I just want to make sure I'm being clear.
So there's a lot of inherent fear of CBDCs without actually understanding what CBDCs are, and that's what's happening in the House. Now, the Federal Reserve of Boston have already created their own CBDC 2 years ago, if not 3 years ago. So the pilot of CBDCs has already been in play for quite some time. It's actually ready.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And then you also have something called the Digital Chamber of Commerce, which is the blockchain cryptocurrency lobby group in Washington that has their summit every year. I think the last one was in March. And they're the ones helping to shape the legislation right now. This is going to go forward. It's not a matter of debate. This is going to go forward. And so when you hear Ferrari saying, yeah, we're going to adopt this,
yeah,
you start thinking about microfinancing, you start thinking about buy now, pay later.
Well, that was my question. That was why I wanted to attack. Do you think Ferrari made that move because of what you're saying right now?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I'm literally coming from a position of really kind of not being clear, but then I'm kind of like, well, wait a minute, hold on a second. That right there is in light of some shit I just heard over the past week or two, right? So I'm trying to really kind of connect dots here. That's all. Yeah.
No. Ferrari has the capital to back it up because Ferrari has Ferrari Finance.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yep. All right. This is from WBUR.org. How State of Massachusetts won the competition to host a NASA for Healthcare. Earlier this year, a group of public officials, scientists, business leaders, and community advocates held a secret meeting in Cambridge. For those of you who don't know what a technocracy and what technocrats look like, read that line again. Thank you. Federal officials were in town, and this group of local leaders was on a mission. They had just a few hours to convince the feds to choose Massachusetts as a hub for the Advanced Research Projects Agency for Health, or ARPA-H, a new federal initiative to invest in solving big and complex health problems. The pitch they crafted included the state's track record for medical innovation in everything from anesthesia and surgery to COVID vaccines. It was delivered directly by Governor Maura Healey, researchers, investors, and others. Last week, we learned this aggressive strategy paid off. Massachusetts, and specifically Cambridge, Kendall Square, will become one of the 3 hubs for ARPA-H. This area is already recognized nationally as a hotbed for life sciences research. Massachusetts hospitals, universities, and other research centers received nearly $3.3 billion in funding from National Institutes of Health, Last year, the highest per capita in the nation, investors poured $8.7 billion into local biopharma companies, according to the trade group Mass Bio. But there was a fierce national competition to host ARPA-H, and it wasn't obvious that Massachusetts would win, according to several people involved in the state's bid. When the decision came, Brian Johnson, president of the Massachusetts Medical Device Industry Council, or MassMedic, said he felt like the state had landed the headquarters of what's essentially NASA for healthcare. Johnson was among the handful of business leaders and state officials, they called themselves the Tiger Team, who worked to win this designation. First, in April, they wrote up a detailed pitch. Then they learned ARPA-H officials wanted to meet in person, and they had just a few days to plan a site visit in May that they hoped would seal the deal. The meeting began at Lab Central, a shared lab space for startups, and continued at the Broad Institute of MIT and Harvard. The argument, according to Johnson, went like this. We said Massachusetts has proven time and time again that we have the ability to take early stage concepts of innovation and commercialize them into global healthcare solutions. Quote, there is no better place in the world than Kendall Square to house this, because you basically can't walk down the street without bumping into some place or some person who invented some major healthcare breakthrough. Johnson and others involved in this effort said they weren't allowed to discuss it publicly until now, or Massachusetts risked being disqualified. For a stretch, the team worked 7 days a week with twice daily calls to try to win the bid. I think we all felt like losing was probably not an option for us, Johnson said. So why was it so important to win this bid? The answer has to do with the lofty ambition of ARPA-H. The agency is hiring program managers to distribute big chunks of federal funding to researchers who take on big challenges, from treating cancer and dementia to making healthcare more equitable. I want to stop here and say this because this is going to be the last item on the docket. This is the sort of stuff that I'm talking about. From a Pan-African perspective, if you take the white people out of it, this actually makes a lot of sense. And this is what I was referring to earlier.
Oh, I want to get Ike. Yeah, I want to get Ike in on this.
It's kind of interesting from the particulars here of Massachusetts. I put myself in the head of the judges. Like, you know, it seemed like Massachusetts has always been getting it, and I'm sure there's isn't there like a diversity argument for? And I'm being a little facetious, for kind of taking it somewhere else, but they're thinking, but Massachusetts has already proven itself over and over again. It's like Massachusetts, like the rich legacy white kid, I guess, but I guess they got it, so they got it again. Now, with regards to you harkening back to the point that you mentioned, either both on technocracy and large scale targeted movements, and consortiums and stuff like that. It's now what I love to get into, and it's a particular. It's not like it's for everybody, right? But I love to get into the basic human selection process that takes. Even in any small organization, any small company, even if you're just doing a basic principal agent, employee, employer type relationship with people, how important, how different people are. Let's just start with that. Vis-a-vis your goals, some people might be completely orthogonal or opposite to it, just based on how they're constituted, and so on and so forth. So the issue always ends up being the right consortium, the right group, and so on and so on. And it always ends up being that the best way to figure that out is through having proven yourself before, which looks something like, beating the odds, which looks something like a competition, which looks something like, and I'm not saying capitalism again. I'm always interested in basically the selection process, because I think that is more important. Take, for example, like, even if you go back to the whole thing I talked about, Ghana and Nigeria deciding, okay, I'm going to do this thing in order to circumvent the dollar, right? Because the dollar's our issue. And I'm also, by the way, let's get into some value adding, right? How about you process and can the palm oil before you send it to me? That way there's jobs created, and we all know value added is the whole point of and by the way, one of the things also, and I know I'm saying many things now, but when you mentioned regarding the ADOS African connection there, forget the whole identitarian aspect of it even, right? It just so happens that Africa is perhaps one of the last kind of frontiers right now. And if you're any group looking to get upside, right, and convexity and a parabolic curve, which you're not going to get in the in the stock market, right, or whatever, right, in places where the game is sewn up, blah blah blah. If you're a group looking for that, then Africa is a place you should be looking, right? So forget even if you were not looking at the brown or the black thing, right? And you're just like, okay, I'm one of the last still left, without, in this game of dancing chairs here. Where's the last spot where that's still the Wild West, quote unquote, and you can still get a lot of upside.
But
yeah.
All right, quick question. Isn't everybody else doing that right now with Africa?
And that's exactly the point. What I was saying.
Okay, no,
okay.
All right. I just want to make sure we're on the same. We're on the same page. We're on the same page, bro.
Yeah.
We're totally on the same. But see, you got to understand though, right? Now, let me just inject an ADOS perspective, right? You've heard it in the manosphere. Shit, Mike has been. You know what? I'll put it on the wood right now. Mike's gonna laugh. I gave him pushback early on. You want to know how me and Mike V met up? I disagreed with the notion that me being ADOS should be engaging with the continent when it came to business. That's how I met Mike. It was actually a disagreement on that. He won out. And then my business partner, who's literally in Kenya right now. Okay, he's from the States. He lives here, but he's literally in Kenya right now, right? When he became my business partner, he's Somali, national origin and ethnicity. He's Somali, right? And during the Civil War in the late '90s, he exiled. His people went to Zambia and Kenya, and then he came here when his father was killed in the conflict, right? And this opened up my perspective on all of this, right? Meanwhile, you still have this ongoing stigma, and this is what a lot of the flack that Mike has caught. We've even had brothers who are from the continent, like Engineering Cannabis or TechRx, who has gotten pushback from people here telling him about what's going on over there. And he's like, I'm from there. How are you going to tell me? Right? You see, so there is a native born stigma that exists here, right? That we have to battle. Right. And I'm saying that stigma is what led to me and Mike even meeting. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So this is just coming from personal experience and perspective. This is something that really does have to kind of be hammered, because I myself was at one point one of those people who was just like, I was kind of meh. You know what I'm saying? Meh.
You exactly are the target audience, though, because to be frank, obviously, the people whom need to, or who need to spearhead any kind of a movement like this, a kind of experiment, blah blah blah. We're talking like less than 10%, of course, right? So, so you, whom is entrepreneurial and has ideas of, okay, well, let me corner this market here, do something there, then you are the target audience. And then perhaps there's some other people, maybe another 20% whom just need to at least see it as a, because those will be your supposed shareholders when you try to go public or some issue like that, right? It doesn't have to be shareholders, stakeholders, whatever holders, or let's give $1,000 each holders, right? Whichever whatever you guys are saying. So there's that also that percentage as well, 100%. And the thing about it is, and shout out to O'Shea, by the way. There was a time when he was kind of focused on that agricultural aspect, even though his marketing stuff, like the agriculture videos were super boring. I don't know if you ever in this Ken Ganda channel. He would do this farm videos and stuff like that, but
Oh,
they
really?
were the worst. And I don't think it was well
Oh my God.
promoted.
Gee, I wonder where he got that idea from. Anyway, go ahead.
So, but the message is, look, you're looking at a situation, right? That quote unquote, place where there's opportunity, like Africa, is a situation where, sure, you're talking about this high tech type of stuff, but there are places where you can do just the first three steps in terms of value added to any particular product, right? Rather than just simply ship X raw, which is the way a lot of stuff gets done. Just export, like just simply, okay, I'm gonna wash and pre-bundle mine or whatever the fuck it is, right? I don't know what this particular raw product is. Could be cocoa, could be coal, could be whatever. But on the level of agriculture, or on the level of quote unquote getting it straight out of the mud, is the kind of involvement you need to get into in order to even see exponential growth in these types of areas, right? So it's not like, oh, I gotta go come up with the wildest idea in Silicon Valley, come up with the next pet walking app or some other kind of tomfoolery like that in order to make it. You can simply go into agriculture and start canning palm oil for the local market, right? And see a lot of return on that. But that was
Ike, so let's bring up another theme point, so to speak, right? When it comes to, like, say, this platform, right? Guerrilla farming and things of that sort, right? Because Mike has hands-on experience developing vacant lots and turning them into farm stands, right? Farm spaces and farm stands. I do gardening, and like I said, I make videos of it all the time. That's why I was like, gee, I wonder where you got that idea from. You know what I mean? When we look at, say, technocratic thought, we're giving our perspective of it. And there's a component that deals with health and wellness. We also do these Black Health Talks. We've held a few of them over the past few weeks or so. And, there's a component to that as well. And so what you're speaking about, the agricultural component, right? Well, what we're looking at here is to sort of like improve our lives, right? In this new paradigm. So how do we utilize the various tools and technologies that exist around us? How do we do that? That really is the ultimate question, right? Because a lot of people are actually declining when it comes to health and well-being as a result of this new paradigm. And we really do have to kind of think about how we channel this into a positive direction. And, it's just amazing. And this isn't in reference to you. This is in reference to just the general sort of take or feeling on what it is that we espouse. There's a pushback to this. And so what we have to do is we have to keep hammering it by crunching through the data and reading the articles, no matter how boring the shit comes across to people. You know what I'm saying? This is life.
I mean, somebody has to do it.
Come on, Mike, speak on it, bro. You got it.
Yeah, I mean, somebody has to do it. And I think that and I don't mind reading these articles, even though a lot of people say that they don't like when I read the articles. But if I don't do it, who else is going to do it, right? I don't see anybody else doing it. And so we have to go through all of this material to kind of fezz out, hey, what's shaking and what's actionable and how can we actually engage in this? Now, we've had several people come on here and say, hey, that information you gave me that you guys talked about, 6 months ago, 9 months ago, man, I came up off of that, man. I made a good profit off of that and I got into it. So I know that what we're doing is working. I think the challenge is a lot of the uninformed people, so to speak, pushing back primarily because they can't grasp it. And so they want us to spoon feed the information to them, even to the point where they want you to do the certification for them and get them the job. That's not what we do here. That's just not what we do here. We're trying to bring this information down to a level that is digestible for you so that you have a better understanding as to how you can move forward and how you can pivot from the position that you're in. And so I only look at things from I mostly look at things from a identity perspective, like you mentioned earlier, because they look at everything from identity. when those venture capitalists with their $500 billion or whatever it is that they have, they don't think about Black people because they don't, they decenter Blackness as a rule and center whiteness. And that's why you see Black people only get less than 1% of venture capital funding, despite all of the, people who want to sit around and talk about, that's identity politics. Well, they play identity politics all the time. So what's the difference? I think that we're not that far from where we need to be from a topic perspective, but I do think that from a practitioner perspective, I think that we do got some ways to go, but we have to think about how we create these ecosystems as a whole. I'm glad that Black Wall Street out in Tulsa, those folks that's working on turning Black Wall Street into a startup space out there. I think they're doing some great work out there. Black Tech Week out in Cincinnati. I think they're doing some really dope work out there as well. Afro Tech, I think they're doing some really dope work down in Austin. And I think that some of the folks that's down there in Atlanta with the Booker T. Washington thing, I think they're doing some really good work down there as well. And so we're not that far off from what we're saying as in terms of things being viable from a industry perspective. Any closing thoughts, Ike?
Great conversation. Just to round things off, I think that when one looks at the problem, let's say, of corruption, right? Something that I didn't add in the whole analysis of Africa, because that is something that is legitimate and will be addressed even from a perspective of people who may have concerns, right? Like, hey, why should I deal with this place? It's corrupt, right? The corruption is something that can be solved technologically. And here's what I mean by that. I mean that, so the corruption needs to be systematized in order, unsystematized varying levels of service looks like corruption, right? So you have varying levels of service. There's I try to get my passport in Ghana, for example. I get led from the parking lot through a special door into this, whatever. I'm walking past all these lines and I get right in front and they take my picture, blah, blah, blah. There is no official lane for that. I paid somebody something, right? That's just the way it is, in West Africa. I know the system. So, I'm going to my land. There's just these things that you do. So there's varying levels of service, but it's not systematized. If it's systematized where it's like, okay, look, if you want this crazy lane that I just went through, it's X amount of dollars. And then here are these other ones. And the way you enforce that technologically is, especially using the blockchain such that, you're talking about smart contracts and things like that, things that are self-governing and non-centralized, right? So it's not easy to manipulate, blah, 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 right? So you use the technology to go over the particular gap here. So you may ask, well, what's the deal with, how come Africans practice non-systematized varying levels of service? It's a tribal thing, right? It's basically saying like, the DMV is the other extreme. The DMV is a systematized, they don't give a damn, you got to fill out the form 3A, blah, blah, blah. So tribal society looks at it like, oh, I know this lady at the DMV, so of course she's going to cut corners for me. Oh, this guy's my guy. That's how tribal societies are, right? Whether it's in the Middle East or whatever, that's how they operate, right? But in a world where we expect to be able to do things in a particular way, it's untenable. And when you mix it with that kind of a world, it starts to look like this kind of hidden hand, varying levels of service where you don't understand where the buttons are. And I think that there needs to be a technological leap that bridges that brings these dusty tribal people into a more systematized world where it's like, yes, here are the various levels and people will pay for and get what they want. So I think that, just to close my thoughts with that aspect of whatever misgivings they may be regarding the African system, I think that it's actually an opportunity for somebody with something blockchain-like in various applications to be able to sell to some of these local government, blah, blah, blah. And the incentive to them is, hey, we're going to decentralize and self-regulate your whole agency here to make it such that you don't have to worry about, you know, the land surveyor stealing from you and that other person not reporting the right amount of X so that they don't pay the tax on the Y, blah, blah, blah. And you'll be the great minister of whatever. And hey, you know, you'll be president one day, right? That's your sales pitch right there. But with that, always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Indeed. Thanks for coming up. Complex, you got anything you want to add before we close out?
No, well, actually I do. Once again, Mike, appreciate you for this chop up. Big Ike, I appreciate you as always for coming through, and happy birthday, baby cakes. And I'm out.
Indeed. All right. Thanks for joining. Please hit the like button on the way out. Share the video if possible and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates.